Today we're going to make an alternative to soap making from scratch. This is called the melt and pour method. If you look at this one is an organic melt and pour. We're going to be using that today. And this one is a goat's milk melt and pour. Both are available online, and I usually have at least one of these in the house. They come in 1 kilogram tubs like this. Not terribly reusable, it's very, very thin plastic, but recyclable. This is 1 kilogram, and that's what you need for one of the recipes. I think you can buy them in 2 or 5 kilograms, depends how much soap you want to make really. We're going to start with making rose and lavender goat's milk soap. We need to try and loosen it out of here. So it's like a bit like, if you saw what I just did, I pushed it out like that and then pushing it out. You will need a bit of supervision if you're doing it with children at this stage. This needs cutting up into smaller pieces, and you microwave it until it is liquid. And that I do in stages. I usually do it at 60% power, so it doesn't get heated up too quickly and burn. And you just have to keep checking on it. Depends on what microwave power you have. So I normally start off with 60% power for 5 minutes, give it a stir, pop it back in, and just keep going until it's liquid. If it's nearly there, then don't put it in the microwave anymore, just stir it. Heat from all the other soap should melt the lumps. And you can always reheat it again. This is what's brilliant about melt and pour. This is going in the microwave. If you don't have a microwave, you can use a bowl on a saucepan with hot water in, like a homemade bain-marie. It just needs to have indirect heat. You can't just put it straight into a saucepan, otherwise it will burn. This is going in the microwave. Going in the microwave, I'm turning the power down to 60%. Most microwaves have that ability. And then I'm going to pop it on for 5 minutes to start with, and then I'll give it a stir, and then it will probably go back in again for another 5 minutes. Just keep an eye on it, and you want obviously it be liquidized. It's starting to melt if you look, so I'm just going to give it a stir, and it will have to go back in again. But what we're looking for is where you can see we want it to look like that all the way through. You can do this with children, just got to obviously be careful with the heat. But what happens is if it's just left to its own devices, it will just start going hard again. I'm going to pop that back in for another 5 minutes at 60%. I'd rather do it slower, just so it doesn't burn. 60%. I'm going to go for another 5 minutes. It's much hotter now and it's more liquid. I'm going to break that up a bit. Might need to do it with a knife, because sometimes this is what happens, it gets stuck together again as it melts. We don't want big lumps, we want small lumps. They will melt quicker. This will have to go back in again, but I'm going to just get rid of those lumps. If you need to, just take them out, put them on the chopping board. It gets a little bit slippery at this point because it's soap, and soap's a bit slippery. Oh, that's getting there though. So that's had 2 lots of 5 minutes, 10 minutes in total at 60%. We're almost there. We want, if the lumps get a little bit smaller, we can stop with the heat altogether and just use the heat of the rest of the soap to melt the lumps, but the lumps aren't small enough yet. I've separated the big lumps, the ones that were attached to each other, and that will go back in again. You can see that where it's starting to cool, it starts to get a bit harder. Quite nice to play with. This is very good material to play with. Back in the microwave, I'm going to just do 60% for 2 minutes now. While we're waiting for that last bit of microwaving to be done, I'll just show you these moulds. These are cake moulds, although I've never used them for cake moulds, I only use them for soap. These are nice flower ones, these are plain muffin ones. This is one of my favourites. You see there's a little bit of rubber in the bottom. It's removable, so you can have a look at it. And it's got flowers in it. I use this one if I've got a flowery essential oil that I use. It goes in the bottom of there. All of this is available online. If you're going to use a wooden mould, you must have the silicone inside, so that you can pop that out and then you get the soap out. I'll show you how to do that later once it's cooled down. This is quite all of these are easily available. The first one we're going to do is rose and lavender goat's milk melt and pour. I have rose essential oil, and I have lavender essential oil. I tend to use organic if I can get hold of it. All we need is 1 kilogram of goat's milk melt and pour, 1 teaspoon of this, 5 ml, 1 teaspoon of this. You can put petals in if you want, but I found they go a little bit brown and not terribly brilliant. So if you do want to, use just perhaps a few lavender petal, the buds of the lavender, and just pop them on the top as it's cooling. But I find it's not necessary. Off we go to the microwave again. If you're using a bowl that's not got a handle, be very careful because the bowl is very hot at this stage now. This one is actually perfect for soap making. Now that's brilliant, look, there's no lumps in there. Oh, there is, there's one lump in there. What's that lump doing? Let's get a little bit stirring in to get rid of that lump. How did one survive and nobody else did? It's a mystery. If there are tiny bits of lumps in there, unless you're putting colouring in, which you can, it wouldn't make a huge amount of difference. That lump just wouldn't end up with any flavouring in it, but it'd be hidden in a soap anyway. I think, has it gone now? It's very hot now. This bowl is very hot. You have to be very careful at this stage. But when it is hot and it is all, oh, I think it's gone. Oh no, there it is. We're nearly there. When it's this hot and this liquid, this is the perfect consistency to add things to. I have collected a few melt and pour recipes. One of my favourite is with activated charcoal, and it makes it very dark and black. And activated charcoal is very good for your skin. And I quite often put vitamin E oil in that as well. You can put salt in there. Later on I'm going to make an oats and honey one, that's quite nice. Lemon oil and lavender oil work quite well together, and you can pop a little bit of dried zest in there as well. One of my favourite melt and pour recipes is with poppy seeds. I put lots of poppy seeds in, I can't remember how many now. And as you use it, it acts like an exfoliator. It's brilliant for giving your back a good scrub. Yep, I reckon that's it. Now at this stage you don't want it to cool down too much, because it will just start hardening. 1 teaspoon of this. I usually take the stopper out, otherwise you end up with just drops. 1 teaspoon of that. Don't hang around too much with, oh, that one's already had its taken out, that's great. 1 teaspoon of lavender, 1 teaspoon of rose oil, and they've really worked well together, those two flavours. Just give it a nice gentle stir. Make sure it's all evenly mixed in. The goat's milk is very, very smooth, silky for your skin as well. I think it's a lovely colour. And we just very carefully pour it into the mould. You see a bit of steam coming off that, it's quite hot. And just stamp it down a bit to hopefully try and get rid of as many bubbles as possible. You can spray that with alcohol on the top and that will get rid of all of those bubbles. I don't tend to. It's just one other thing that I don't need to do. We put that somewhere to cool. If you want it to cool down quite quickly, pop it in the fridge. If you're not in a hurry, then just pop it on the side at room temperature. And we'll come back to that later. When it's solid, we'll cut it up and we will make it into nice little parcels that can be given to people for presents. This melt and pour is organic melt and pour, OMP, it's on there, which means that it's organic. And for this one, we're going to make oats and honey, and it's a really nice one for your skin as well. I've made this one before. The same as the last one. We cut this up, melt it in the microwave, and for this recipe you need a tablespoon of honey and a tablespoon of ground oats. And again, this is a 1 kilogram pot, easily available online. %, heat for 5 minutes in the microwave as before. Just move 60%, 5 minutes. This has had 5 minutes at 60% power on my microwave. It's already starting to melt, you can see. I'm just going to give it a stir. Make sure the bits are separated as well as best as they can. They start to stick together at some point. Lovely jubbly. Back in the microwave for 5 minutes at 60%. We're nearly there. That's 10 minutes at 60% heat, and I'm just going to loosen up that big lump that's gathered in the middle, and then I think another 2 minutes. That worked for the goat's milk. 2 lots of 5 minutes, giving it a stir each time, and then the last was 2 minutes. 12 minutes in total then. breaking up those big bits. Back in for the last 2 minutes on 60. Let's have a look. I think this is pretty much ready now. Just give it a stir to make sure there's no lumps. Yep, that's pretty much there. This is oats and honey, so that's 1 tablespoon of oats and 1 tablespoon of honey. The oats need to be ground or just use oatmeal, whichever you've got. If you've just got rolled oats, then grind them up to make them into smaller bits. And then it will be very, very gently exfoliating. Runny honey's best. If you're going to use a harder set honey, just microwave it for a few seconds to soften it up. Right, this is going to be a bit tricky. There you go, done it. Get most of that honey off there first. And a tablespoon of ground oats. That's it. And we'll mix those in together. Fold all of those oats in. You want to get it quite nice and even. If there are any clumps, just squash them against the side like that, and that will break it up nicely. I use a stick blender for when I'm making soap from scratch, but I don't know whether it would perhaps cool this down too quickly and it would start to set, so I think it's best just to do it by hand. You can use one big mould and cut it up, or you can use the little ones. I'm going to use the little moulds for this. They're quite pretty. That's nearly there. Just make sure there's no big bits of honey or oats. It does start setting around the edges, so just scrape that back in. That's looking good. There are some air bubbles in this. I don't mind them. It's homemade soap after all. But you can use alcohol spray to get rid of the bubbles on the top when you put them in the moulds if you really want to. These are just for friends and family and our own family. We're not looking for professional soap. If you want professional soap, you can buy professional soap, can't you? I'm just going to get rid of that lump. Sometimes if there's a lump just from what I did there, just get rid of it by melting it back in, otherwise it tends to show up as a slightly different colour in the finished soap product. That's there. Just squish that out, get rid of that. It's quite a nice ingredient to play with actually, soap. Let's get that in the mould. You can see the oats, and we're just going to pour it into the mould. That could be tidied up when it's cool. Try and be as tidy as I can. It's not always possible, it's not always perfect. These ones are going to be slightly bigger. Starting to clump a bit. scraper for that last one. That's close enough. There you go. This all just washes up nicely, it's only soap. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 little soaps it makes. If you use the big mould, I tend to cut that up into 10. That works out quite well. It just depends what you want to use. We're going to walk away, and I'm just going to, I don't know how easy this will be. I'll try and bash the air out, but I don't think it will work too well. I'm going to walk away and leave them to cool down. We'll come back in an hour or two and just check to make sure before we cut them up that they're nice and solid, and then we'll wrap them up and make them into gifts. It's a couple of hours later, and this soap is now completely hard. It's completely room temperature, that's what we're after. You can just feel it through there. I'm going to take this out, wiggle it out. There you go. This is the lavender and rose one. There you go. We just need to tidy this up a little bit, because if you remember, there's a mould at the bottom. That's it, I've got it, hold of it here. Oh, this is, look at that, isn't that wonderful? Just going to tidy this edge off. That can all the bits can be melted back together again in a little pot and used again. Just tidying it up a little bit. I won't waste that. Yep, that's good. Just might trim that off just a little bit more. It's only where the mould's slightly smaller than the big mould. You can measure it if you want, or you can just use your eye. That's about half. And then it's about that much for. That is a good bar of soap there. And I'll show you how to wrap one up in a minute. Not perfectly even, I understand that. If you want them to be, then use a ruler. But they're rarely next to each other. Once they've been made, so it doesn't really matter. There you go. 10 bars of soap. Tidying up the edge, and we'll use this as a little bit of wrapping paper. I'll just show you one. Need about half of that for one bar. Bit of string. I'll do that slower so you can see. So from there you want the flat edge there, and grab hold of it, hold those down and then twist it round so that it catches there. Turn it over underneath. Underneath. I'll do one more knot there, and this is the time to add a little label. Here's one I made earlier, homemade rose, lavender and goat's milk soap. This is just a piece of card with a little hole punch in it, and I pop that in there and then tie it on one more time and do a little bow. Trim the excess off from the string, and there you go. Lovely little presents. This is an alternative way of finishing off a soap. This is a little set that came from Amazon, and it is a wax seal kit. The candle goes underneath. I'm going to put this on my cooker so I don't burn my side. I have quite literally been burnt before. Not me, my work surface. Let me just show you how to get the wax. They come like this, and I just chop it up into small it's probably about right. There's 5. Yes, that's quite a good size for one. These go into there. Actually 4 looks like it will be enough. 4, depending on how thick they are. Once that has melted, we will pour that on. So she'll get the parcel ready. Slither there, I'll just get that off. So that's nice and tidy. We're going to follow the same. I didn't get the string ready, so just pop it on that. Spare bits. This is the same as before. I'll try and do it so that you can see what I'm doing, and twist it like that. It holds it in place. We'll make this straight into a knot, and then I will pour the wax, the melted wax, directly onto the bow, and it holds the bow into place and finishes it off nicely. For my birthday money this year for my mother-in-law, I bought the wax kit and some of this wax, and also these wax seals. I'm going to use a flamingo today. I have Moon's, Jolly Roger and a flamingo. So that's what I'm going to use. They take a little bit longer than doing a label, but I'll show you afterwards. I think that it's worth it if you want to make special gifts. If it's just for yourself, you don't even need the label if you know what it is, and you can smell that it's rose and lavender. There's a very, very nice smell. I've flattened that down. I've put slightly less in this time because it did go a little bit too far. I'll try and keep it in a more of a... And I'm going to squish it down. There you go. Once that dries off properly, that will all be the same colour and the same size. That's an alternative to a label. And if you decorate them all slightly differently, if you've got more than one batch on the go, then you'll know the flamingos are the rose and lavender. You can smell it through the greaseproof paper anyway, but that's just another gift. I'll just show you how to take these out. Very simple. Push them through. That's why we use the silicone moulds. And you can see the oatmeal in there. And they smell lovely. They've got the honey in there. This one just needs tidying up just a tiny bit, just taking those little bits of overflow off. I think that was the only one, pretty much, yeah. And we'll just get a piece of greaseproof paper. I will do the same thing. I'm going to cut my string first this time because it's easier to have the string cut. Although they're slightly different shape, they're pretty much the same. So this is a rose shaped one. Pop it in the middle. If you want the top of the flower to be on the top where the bow is, just put the soap in upside down when you make it. I'll show you how to do one of those as well. That's probably a good idea because it will sit flat. That's okay, but it's not sitting as flat as it could. So let's just pop this in upside down because that will be the finished top string. It's about getting things in the right order. These are lovely little gifts. What happens is once I've had a batch of soap made and it's ready, if I've made it myself it needs to cure for 4 weeks, but this melt and pour is perfect because you can use it straight away. I send a text out and then I start getting requests, and these get sent by post all over the country. Local people pick it up or I drop it off. And it's just a little gift. At this stage in the game I'm just asking people to give me the cost of the materials so I can replace them to make more. I'm not really into making a business at the moment, but that either way is fine. You can do that if you want to, you can do that if you want to, or you can find your own ways. I'm sure there are lots of ideas online as well. I will carry on until they're all wrapped up, ready to go, and then I shall send the text off to people. So soap is on its way, people.